Back to an episode of Uncover the Human. We are joined this week with our guest, Michanda. Michanda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you all. Definitely. Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you here. So just give us some background. What's your story? What brought you here? What makes you tick?
Woo! I say I never know what's going to come out of my mouth when something along that kind of question is asked of me. I feel like you said you have cats, Alex?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Currently many.
How many?
We're fostering a few. So right now there are 7 cats in the household. So it's a lot.
7 cats. And how many lives do they say cats live? I don't know.
9?
I think about 9.
7 times 9, 63. I feel like I could probably fill in about 63 avenues talking about what I've gone through. So let's see my story, Alex and Christina. So excited to share with you. I think I'm just that person who loves learning and growing. And my path is certainly anything but linear. It's anything but predictable. There are certainly parts of it that I wish I could have skipped over. And at the same time, I'm grateful for everything I learned. Now, that's the caveat. I've learned a lot of things, and I'm still learning, but it doesn't mean I want to relive some of those lessons. And very honest about those lessons. They help me grow. So I just really believe that we all need to embrace the multi-facets of our lives, embrace the messiness, embrace the fact that, there's not one size that fits all, and just enjoy it. And I wish I would have known that earlier, Alex. I spent a lot of time mastering. Christina and I talked about this before when we chatted. Like, I'm mastering, trying to be like perfect, trying to be the overachiever. And I have many degrees in that, and they all wore me out, probably almost killed me. And so it's nice to have shed that and to practice just being right now. And so I don't know what else I can say. There's a whole lot more, but I'm going to pause there for a second. So I'll just say that that's me learning, growing, and shedding behind some of that old stuff.
I like all that. And you are the essence of being from our
That definitely feels like the most honest answer that you can give, because everybody does have those stories, and usually we try to either retell it as a linear version or as some kind of like these are all the things that led to the current moment, but there's always 10,000 other little facets and other little pieces, and everything that added to this was not all in a row.
No, it was not all in a row, and it wasn't predictable. I was talking to my kids, they're in college now, and I was saying to them, I said, what if, like right now, you've met the person you may spend the rest of your life with? Because, your dad and I, we met as freshmen in college many, many, many moons ago. And you could not have paid us to believe that one day we'd be married, have kids, living in Denver, Colorado. We met at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. You couldn't have paid me to believe any of that. So when I asked them, hey, what if you guys have met like the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with? And their answers were like, I hope not. I hope not. I said, you never know, because if someone would have told me that your dad was that person back when I was your age, I would have probably said the same thing. Like, no way. There's no way we're going to ever, like, that's, you mixed it up. And of course, life unfolds in all kind of ways. And our way of it unfolding was, it's pretty kind of ridiculous and crazy and amazing too. So, yeah.
Oh, that feels painfully familiar.
It definitely does.
So I'm curious how that applies. You've got kids, you said they're in college now, and college is very much like, in my memory anyway, and I don't mean to project too much to everybody else's college experience, but that's a bit of in turmoil, a bit tumultuous. Like, you're kind of trying to decide a lot of things, figure out where things might land. There's also, at least I remember having a belief that there was going to be some more steady path afterwards, or something predictable about like, I do this and then, there's a more predictable outcome, which, as we've all since experienced, is very much not the case. So I'm curious how you had the experience. You said you've been through many degrees. What's it like both going through that and leaving that, plus talking to your kids about it?
Well, these are metaphoric degrees. So I have one degree. So I'll make sure I clear that up, because I say that I'm probably the person with the least amount of education in my family. I have one lonely Bachelor of Science degree. And I'm in a family of people who kept going, and I'm content with my one lonely Bachelor of Science degree. I have no, low self-esteem about that. I'm okay with that. And I went to school thinking I was going to go into pre-med. And I think that was still like that old wanting to pick a career that everyone's going to like, wow, that's so great, be a doctor. So I like the idea of it. And I really do love like the science and how things work in the body, like that, the actual discovery part of like we're made so amazingly. And I participated in a few workshops and apprenticeships and programs that kept me all excited. And then I say chemistry cured me of all of that. So I go to college and then sitting in that massive, lecture hall. And you're like, you would think I've never taken chemistry for how much was actually translating for me. I mean, I felt like I was like, am I the only one in this room who is clueless about what we're doing here? And so I say that I would spend hours back then, Alex and Christina. It was just like constantly like spending time in the chemistry lab. My work study was in the chemistry lab. I was going to chemistry tutoring sessions, and I was getting like a straight C minus, D plus, maybe a C minus, D plus. Oh yeah, we hit an F. And so that was my chemistry experience. And then I remember, because I spent so much emphasis and time on chemistry, if a class came up where I had to write a paper, I'm like, oh my gosh, a paper's doing this. Let me throw something together. And then I would get an A, like, what, are you kidding me? I threw that thing together. I barely put any time in it. Like, what is the problem? I'm putting all this energy into like the chemistry. I want to be a doctor. What's wrong with this? And so finally I just had to get honest and let that go. And like, you know what? I'm okay not being a doctor. This is too much suffering. And so I went from that to, I think I'll be on TV. So I was a news anchor, a news reporter. I call that the BC life before children. And then in between there, ordained as a priest, and then decided formal ministry. Oh my gosh, that's not my thing. Like, I appreciate it and I understand it works for a lot of people, but like it was too narrow for me. I need to like be able to reach people of all backgrounds, all whatever. Like, I don't care what you say you believe or what you call it. I just want to connect with people because we're all connected, and that's all that matters to me. So I'm rambling. And so I tell my kids this rambling story to say, just learn and learn who you are and learn maybe what you don't like and what you want to try, because most of us, whatever we get that degree in and what we imagine it's going to be, you're going to end up somewhere else anyway. Mm-hmm. So have fun on the journey, and let's not get stuck on what we call it or what am I going to do when I finish? Because whatever you say, let's not put that thing in concrete, because it's probably going to change. So that's my, take on that. And so I pay a little attention to what they say they're studying. And I just care more about like, what are you excited about? Like, what do you like? What are you learning about yourself? And then a lot of stories about what they're stressed out about, like what class they didn't like or what big project they have going on. So we talk more about that than what you're going to do when you finish, because they're like a senior and a junior now.
It's a great approach. It's true though. At least when I went, there's this idea, myth, dream, expectation, all of the above, that, you pick a degree, you pick a major, you graduate, and then that's it. Your whole path is right in front of you. All you have to do is kind of one step after the other, and you don't have to make any decisions. It's all very clear and set up.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? And then almost scary at the same time. Like, it sounds nice, but when I really slow it down and think about that, that's kind of scary. I'm glad it's a little bit more nuanced and colorful and more kaleidoscopic than that.
Also, I hate to think that I was right when I was 20 and thinking about what life was going to be like. I hate to be kept to that.
Yeah, like it's kind of fun that you have this picture, when you're in your 20s. And it's also like wonderful that picture is not the whole story. Yeah. And it ends up being a tiny fragment. So I don't know. It's an interesting time. And I really have a lot of empathy for our young people right now, because there's so much more that they are digesting and experiencing than I'll speak for me at least, than I did, during that season. Like for me, it was so much about like, what are you going to do when you're finished? Like, what's your title going to be? What's going to be your next job? And I was so brought up on that, that Nike culture of like, just do it. You got to be something, keep going, go, 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 no pain, no gain, go, go, go. Like, so whatever accomplishment you had, it's like, what's next? What am I going to tackle next? Where am I headed to next? And like all that energy spent on trying to be somewhere and get somewhere. And my husband, he's my Renaissance man. He does like all kind of cool stuff. And one of the things he does is he writes poetry. And he has this amazing poem that's called like, I'll be happy when. And he goes through this litany of things like, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy. And it's like, ultimately, when we put off our joy or the emphasis on, it's based on an occurrence and not even a present occurrence, but like some future occurrence. Once that occurrence arrives, if it even does arrive, it can't sustain us. Like there's no peace in that. And I'm really encouraged by our young people who have all this going on. Like they're talking about like, wow, racial reckoning. I got to work on my R's and W's today, but they're talking about racial reckoning and the climate and, the pandemic and, school shootings. And I mean, all these heavy things that, we didn't have a drill for lockdown when we were going to school. We had tornado drills in Ohio and fire drills, but, no one had lockdown drills. And so when you talk with them, there's as much as they're a little bit disenchanted, and that's putting it mildly, with our leadership overall, like global leadership, let alone, country leadership. I also see like this depth of them exploring and asking these deeper existential questions that I was too busy on trying to get to that next thing to ever have slowed down to meditate on or contemplate. I don't know where that came from. So I don't know what you asked me. So somehow I got onto that.
So that is once again painfully relatable. So that's definitely that makes sense. That's how it kind of feels. And Christina and I were talking about this just the other week. There was somebody coming out of college and she asked Christina, like, well, how do I figure out what kind of job I want to do? Because I want to figure out like what really aligns with who I am. And when she had told me about that, both she and I kind of digested the fact that at that age, I don't think either of us had asked that. It was all just, well, what job title seems kind of interesting. As if that was a full personality or even the right way to think about the choice when you don't even know what it's like to be part of that job, part of any job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are you doing these days? So you said you'd been doing a little bit of coaching, a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah, I do a little bit of everything. That's that question when people ask you, at an event, like, hey, what do you do? And I'm like, tell me more about you first. And so listen, so that way I know, well, which one of my cards should I pull out? It's kind of how I feel. I'm not talking business cards, but like, if you imagine you're holding a playing deck, like, well, which card am I pull out? Like, I think I'll stick with the hearts tonight. Maybe we'll do clubs. Maybe we'll do diamonds. Like, I kind of never know. I've reached this place where I don't even know if the titles fit anymore. And that's really funny because we live in such a world that focuses on a title when we say, what do you do? And I like how you phrase it. What am I working on? Mm-hmm. And so I'm working on ultimately, this whole journey of life of practicing how to be gentle with myself and with other people, how to be more present, how to hold space for people in their journey of doing that. So as a quote coach, and I put the air quotes up when I say coach, because I don't even think that title fits. And people who know me well will say that, like, we don't know what Michanda does, but she just go talk with her. And so what I love to help people with is just when I'm chatting with them and they may say, hey, there's this area in my life that that's causing me, some pain or some disruption right now. And I don't care what it is, if it's related to a career or whether it's related to a relationship or just that numb sense that there's got to be more. And I just feel stuck and disconnected from my own life and my own self. I don't care what people say. Even, I was sharing earlier that, I offer executive services. So people like, oh, I'm an executive, I'll come to you. And I'm like, it's all the same. Whatever anyone comes to me, I'm going to ask the questions about like, well, what do you care deeply about? What are your values? If today is your last day, what is it that you hope that you learned? And what is it that you hope that you've shared? And so as we peel back this idea that I need to have reached a certain pinnacle or I need to have things solved, ED, and finished, ED, I want people to make space to consider, well, what if it's all continuing, ING? What if there's not a finish line? What if I can see all of this as part of growing, ING, and not something that I should be finished with by now? And I think that's so challenging for our culture because, it's so based so much on the external and checking something off of a list and then moving on to the next piece. We go from preschool to elementary school to, middle school and high school and college. And then what's next? As opposed to, well, do we see our connection to life, to ourselves, and then to one another? Can we live in this place that has more purpose and meaning? And that's what I want people to really slow down. And I do mean slow down. We practice a lot of breath. And I think breath is a beautiful metaphor, that inhale, taking it in and receiving, and then hold it for a moment before you let it go. Just receive it and hold it and be still. And then exhale. And as we're exhaling, we're not just like purging and getting rid of something, but like that's a part of a beautiful exchange where if you think of trees, like we're giving them what they need. They need that carbon dioxide and we're receiving from them when we breathe in. So like there's this beautiful opportunity to constantly be like receiving and sharing and giving. And when it comes to ourselves, I say what I know for me, what I was so out of practice when I began to question and look at myself, that like, wow, I did not really know how to receive from me. I didn't know how to receive from anyone, and I certainly couldn't receive from me. How can I be gentle? How can I love me, from me to me love? How can I make space for presence and not doing? I valued the doing. What can you see that's tangible, that shows accomplishment? I was addicted to all the A's of like, I need affirmation and adoration and attention and acceptance and, all these things. Like I was the little puppy. I have a puppy now. I was the puppy. I need more. Give me. And it was never enough. And I needed more of that. And so to finally wake up and say, wow, that was a lot of time spent majoring on the minors. And yet I'm grateful for it because it gave me the contrast, but I certainly don't want to go back to that. And so now, making space to help other people in that journey is what is most meaningful for me of all the things, whatever I have my hands in. That's ultimately what I want to help people do, is go inside out and make space for knowing how amazing they already are, and to live in this place with more ease and stillness and presence and a genuine acceptance and not craving that outer acceptance.
I love everything you just said.
It's just one more massive gut punch of relatability. Just close to home.
Yes, very much so. Well, and it's interesting because I started thinking about the contrast between our physical life, because when you're talking about the breath, I just started thinking about how physically the breath is a great example, but everything about our body is in movement. It's always in the ING. It's, our blood goes to all parts of our body, and it doesn't just stay there. Actually, we don't want it to stay there because otherwise we lose limbs. It's constantly flowing. The breath is constantly coming in and out. Everything, our cells are constantly renewing and dying and renewing. Our hair is constantly growing and we cut it and it grows again. And yet we have managed to spiritually, at least, societal pressures to spiritually really look for this finite, this you accomplish one thing and that's the finish line. And then it's another thing and it's the finish line. And everything is siloed and it's separated. Yes. And it's all about finishing, not continuing.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what, it sounds like you can relate. I try to be careful not speaking for everybody, but I certainly know that I was conditioned and primed to be a finisher, to be like, what have you accomplished? What can you show for yourself? Like, what's the result? Like like I should have some beautiful widget to like provide for you. Like, here's what I've been working on all these years. Here you go. And I can offer this, beautiful bow, and ribbon package that's supposed to somehow, exemplify why we're living. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a mistake, and it creates so much distress and turmoil. And I think we have done a disservice to our young generation and to our own generation when we perpetuate that. And so if we can interrupt it and really become connected to the more, which is, I say it's invisible. It's visible inside of us. It's not visible on the outside. It's invisible in us already. And what's so great about that is I don't need to go on these long external journeys. It's really right here. And external journeys can help. I mean, like, who wouldn't want to go like travel to the Himalayas or, go hang out in Peru or, like there are beautiful places we can go that certainly support it. But ultimately, this is where we need to go, is right inside, like to our own heart, soul, spirit, essence. I don't care what people call it. They call anything my light, there are all these different words, and we kind of can almost, create even more distress on what word is it? What is it? Like, and I'm like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it's inside of you. Doesn't matter what you call it. It matters to you connecting. Can you hear? Are you able to slow down? Can we hear that? And if not, the distress is, well, what's wrong with me? Because I'll never feel satisfied. And people told me I should feel satisfied and content and have this joy if I just follow this menu of what I'm supposed to be doing. And instead, when we throw all that out, we realize like, wow, there is no supposed to. No one can define it for me. It's my discovery. People can support us in that. We support one another. We do need connection. But ultimately, it's inside of us, and making space for that with massive love and gentleness and a sense of humor helps to be able to laugh at like, yep, that was me skinning my knee on that. Yep, that was me putting my foot in my mouth. Yeah, that was me falling down. Like, that's me. And if we can laugh at these pieces and be like, it's okay, that just makes myself more seasoned. It makes me more like, okay, I have more facets now because of that, as opposed to thinking that that's something where we need to have shame or hide or not share. But we need to be more vulnerable with each other, that all of us have made massive mistakes. We've all done things that we've regretted, and none of those things define us. We're so much more, and opening up to that.
Yeah, it's a really great goal to try and help impart that to people too, because that's definitely a cause of suffering, and it'll pop up. Even if you start to become aware of it, it'll pop up 10 dozen times, a day, a minute, a month. That'll come up, just some version of like, right, I'm still punishing myself for that thing, or still lagging that one. Okay, all right. I need to accept more of the full story.
Yes. I say, introduce me to someone who hasn't been hurt on this planet. I'd love to meet them. I mean, have you met that person yet?
No. You met people that pretend they haven't, or pretend that they have, but it didn't matter. It didn't hurt. They were above that. They were too strong for that.
Yes. And I used to be one of those people. Like, I'm fine. I'm fine. And I remember when I was younger, the messaging of being told, be strong. And being strong meant not to show weakness. And even as a woman, it was like to hide your feelings, so I had to put on this like ridiculously masculine, false armor of I'm okay. And like, even like my news anchor voice had that lower, like it's so contrived. And it's like, wow, like all that energy being someone I'm not is exhausting. And it really causes suffering because you wake up and you wonder, like, what's wrong with me? It's like, nothing's wrong with you. What the issue is, you swallowed something that wasn't yours. We swallowed a truth that was not our own. That's what's making us sick. That's what we need to like, regurgitate and get out of us, is like all of these old beliefs that people told us who we think we should be, as opposed to embracing like, wow, like we are all this massive, beautiful masterpiece. And at the same time, we are a messy work in progress. It's both. And they are both true. And we don't live our lives in these pie charts. Like, here's my professional life, and here's my personal life, and here's my family life. And like, there's no such thing as these charts and these pie pieces and segment. It's like, no, it's all interconnected. There's this beautiful flow if we make space for it. And we begin to see ourselves as connected to what's inside of us, and then connected to this massive allness that we don't even understand, and stop trying to understand it. And I love trying to understand it because I get all into like that. I mean, we cut our cable a long time ago, so I don't get any more Discovery. But I used to love watching those Discovery Channel shows. And I think it's cool to try to discover it, but ultimately we don't know. There's so much that we don't know. And that excites me to say it's not about the knowing. Stop waiting until I know to experience. Just simply, let's live, let's support each other, and let's do it with a lot more kindness and love and light and peace. Because if we only focus on the hurt and we don't heal through that hurt, then we pass on that hurt. And that's what we're seeing, generations and generations of hurt that's just been passed on because none of us is designed to hold it. We weren't designed for pain and hurt, so it has to leave us. And the healing is the only way to see that almost recycled, so we're not passing that on. We need to let that energy be changed and transformed.
Definitely heartily agree. There's definitely like a lot of pain that just gets passed down generation to generation, just historically, culturally. We just continue to, without addressing any of these things, it always continues to go on. And I'm curious, you talked about you had like some perfectionism. You wanted to, you felt like the puppy. You felt like you were chasing these things, and those are all very relatable. What drove you to feel like there was a change that needed to happen, or drove you into finding what change you wanted to make?
I was telling my husband this. It's funny. Last night, something similar came up in a discussion with these really cool people we met just on Tuesday. So we hung out with them again, on Thursday, and so I was telling a story of how a young man, maybe about, I don't know, time is so relative. I don't know if it was 5 years ago, 8 years ago, could have been 4 years ago. I don't know when this happened, but it happened. And so he asked me that question in a different format, and without thinking, what just came out of my mouth was, he's like, what's in you? Like, what's this new insight? Where did it come from? And I was like, suffering. And that was like my first, like, kind of like off the cuff answer. And I would make that more nuanced now. I wouldn't say it's like, I wouldn't just chalk it all up to suffering, like suffering needs any more glory. I would just say that, it comes from something I can't define. I think that there's something in each of us that when it's our time, we become no longer literally able to continue in what I now call like a lie, except I didn't know it was a lie. And so I just reached this place where, I don't know, the cosmos, everything helped. And all of a sudden, like, I just no longer can tolerate it. It's unbearable. It's unbearable to think that I'm going to try to morph myself into something that is so not me. And it happened during a time when I was serving in a formal ministry as a priest. And I'm really careful how I talk about this part, because a lot of people love their ministries and I want them to continue to love their ministries. So I'm not speaking for all ministries. I'm speaking very specifically for where I was. And the environment was perfect for my growth in its imperfection, because I was also a mirror of imperfection, of not knowing who I am. So I'm in this environment where I'm almost rewarded for focusing on the exterior. And many of us are empaths on this planet. And so we can intuit and we know how other people are feeling. Yeah. And I twisted that gift to fulfill the part of me that craved performance. So what I mean by that is, if I could sense what someone wanted from me, I would give it back to enhance my performance. And it wouldn't be true. And I remember thinking about how I had deeply hurt a dear friend, like sister to me. She literally had my first son's first birthday party at her house, because we were living in this tiny little loft downtown and no one could ever park, to come see us. And she's like, and they had no air conditioning. So she would always come pick me up sometimes and bring me over. When I was pregnant with my second son, I'd, come over with my snack bag and my son, who by then was in a toddler pack and play carry seat and all of that. And I would haul it all in her car and hang out. And so many years later, while we were both serving in this ministry, and it was a large ministry at the time, and she and her husband had made the decision that they were going to move and leave, go beyond this ministry, which sounds fabulous, except that was not the culture of the ministry then. It was like, no one should leave. Like, we want you to stay. And instead of me being accepting of that, I was so in love, and love's not even a good word, because I don't want to mess up the word love with this. I was so in whatever the tainted version of love is. I was in some kind of cloud of thinking that I need to be a good priest. And a good priest would tell you that you're not supposed to go, because that's what we do. And I'm following, this whole order structure that we have. So we have a bishop who says this is how things should go. So I want to make sure I'm in support of what he's saying. So it was a lot of just constrained choice making that was not authentic. And one day I slowed it down, because I really believe this happens with so many of us. There comes a point where your soul is like, have you had enough? Have you had enough of not living in accordance to who you are? All this you've been doing, very little is who you are. A whole lot is energy spent on things that are not who you are. Are you sick of it yet? Yeah. Have you had your fill? And when I said yes, it was as if I was literally asking the question that my husband asked of me. Well, no, he said something to me. He said, you've taken on what's not yours. And when he said that, I wanted to know, gosh, ouch, and thank you, because it hurt and it was real. And I guess I needed it. And I wanted to know, what else have I taken on that's not mine? Mm-hmm. And then avalanche came, and I thought about this close girlfriend who I'm like, wow, she's like a sister to me. And you just judged her in a moment when she was really trying to move outside of this culture that was really narrow. And instead of you being understanding and compassionate and supportive of her, you were judgmental, you were narrow-minded, and you didn't even believe what you said, even worse. You were just repeating what you thought you needed to say. And that made me ill. And when I looked in the mirror and said, wow, no one forced me to do this. I did this. Where did I go astray? And it was like, well, when you stopped listening on the inside is where you went astray. So imagine, here I am serving in this ministry, and I've gone astray because I'm listening outside of what's supposed to be right, and I'm not checking in here. And so I made a decision wow, I am now committed. I want to hear from the inside and speak from that place. And that's what really began this massive quaking and opening and a joy and a freedom. But there was a lot of, I'll stop there. There was a lot of travail to get there. And thankfully, I had a beautiful place of support, and I still do now. A small group of us who support, like, wow, my so-called ministry is simply being who we all are. And that's what my priesthood is. It's not about converting anybody. I'm not about making them go any place. No, formation classes. No, the only formal thing I might do is a wedding or a funeral. But outside of that, it's like, no, we're just constantly all here to help and support each other. So that's
a powerful question. Have you had enough? I can definitely relate to that.
I'd also love to know, just in if various examples you might have thought of. I loved how you phrased it. You said suffering has had enough glorification already. There's a variation on that. It was better said, but what makes you say that? I can definitely feel truths of that within myself. I'm curious what your experience has been.
That's one of those things that just came out in the moment. I hadn't really thought of it. I'm like, yeah, that's like, I'm hearing it too come out of my mouth. Like, that is really true. And that's really cool. I don't know where that came from. It's just, and I should take it back, because when people say we don't know where it came from the depth of who we all are. That's where that came from. And that's new to me sometimes too. Like, I'm getting it new too. So we all have those experiences when we just let it come through. And it was one of those ones like, wow, that is really cool. Yeah. It has gotten a whole lot of glory. Yeah. I've certainly let it get a lot of glory in my life. And so I think that I listened to this podcast when my husband and I were driving to the mountains about a month ago. And I definitely needed to, because somehow driving up to the mountains at night just freaks me out when he's driving, because it's like this whole, like, I need something to not be looking at you, because then I want to tell you how to drive, and that doesn't go well. And that's my fear dressed up as control. And so I know all that. So let me just breathe. And a podcast helps me to like not be looking at like how close you are to that guardrail there. So anyway, listening to this podcast, and it was, I think, Carolyn Mace, and she was talking about how support groups, as an example, can be really helpful for people. We have many of them, that so many of us, again, like, who hasn't gone through pain, whatever, trauma, there's probably a support group close to that, if not already for that. And we put a lot of emphasis on that because they can be tremendously helpful. And she described it as like, it's a boat to get you from one side to the other side. The challenge is that some people make the boat a houseboat. And I thought how she said that was so powerful. And I really believe that's probably where that came up in me, is thinking like, yeah, our culture almost celebrates that. And then we have a badge of honor. It's like, what do they call that? Like there's a term for it. I don't know, humble brag or whatever. Like, oh, I don't want to, like, we kind of do that whole like, well, or it's like simply, I want to wear as a breastplate of, look how special I am. Like, I was up all night doing that. And, oh my gosh, like, well, my son was, went through this and when I went through that. We just kind of like to tell these stories of suffering as if like, I need you to know how much I've suffered. And I'm like, I don't know why we do that. Again, it's that craving for attention, I think, in this weird place. And we put a lot of attention on that. And then we start confusing the suffering with our identity. And that's where I think we need to be really careful, because instead of saying, I'm going through something, we start saying, I am that thing. And we're not that thing. It's something we're going through. It's something that's to teach us. And if we twist it and we start saying that's who I am, then we give away our power.
Well, we also put that expectations on others. So it's like, it's hard work. It has to be hard to be worth it, to be successful, to get you somewhere, to be rewarded. If it's not hard, then it doesn't mean anything. If you don't want to work hard based on my definition of hard work, not your own, then, you're not worth my time. You don't have value.
Totally. I mean, and it's kind of this weird place again where I think it's like we're so out of practice with joy and love and receiving that I'd rather talk about my difficulty, talk about the suffering, talk about the pain. I'd rather you see that part of me than to be at peace and to figure out that I am peace. And that's, a part of the experience here too, is coming home to that. And I think because it's so unfamiliar, we create more, like we really do, subconsciously and consciously. We have to kick up some kind of chaos. We have to sabotage something, because that is the familiar comfort zone, is when I'm feeling the opposite of love for me, when I'm feeling the chaos, when I'm feeling confused, because the stillness, the quiet, joy and love, it gets into that area. Do I believe I deserve that? Do I believe that's who I really am? And those are all things we're learning and growing, and we need to help one another, make that shift and understand, like, those are also aspects of who we are. And wow, wouldn't we want to, support one another in experiencing that?
That's a really great way of putting it. I really just, I love all the things you're saying. And I really love that differentiation between, like, the idea of the houseboat of suffering, right? There are people who pause on the way. And I was considering, like, I'm curious how you got through some of the suffering, how you pushed through those things, but I'm almost more curious now, if we look at this from the other side, what are ways you feel like, there are examples of times when you do experience that love from the other side, feel like there is that compassion?
Yeah, I think it's what I talk to a lot of people about when, the question we ask when we go through something so painful is why. And we're looking for this cause effect answer, like, well, what did I do wrong? Or what did someone else do wrong? And we want this almost like equation, like it's because this has happened. And I'm like, life is so much more multidimensional, and a moving multidimensional component that it cannot be traced most often. I mean, there's some things, of course, that are like direct, but a lot of other things are just, it is. And there's not an explanation. And there's not. And that really is so challenging for the humanity of our mind. And we become fixated on, I need to understand it. And so we keep on the hamster wheel up in this mind, needing to process and understand something that was not designed to be processed and understood. It was designed to be experienced and to teach us and to see it holistically and accept it and surrender to the lesson, which simply means stop fighting and trying to change it and trying to, deny it or push it away or blame someone else, and just simply get to that place of like, okay, I'm here. I talk about when I was married the first time, and I'm like, who was that girl thinking she should get married? In fact, my dad just sent me some pictures, and he asked me, like, honey, I found the pictures from your first wedding. Do you want me to send them to you? I'm like, heck, why not? Let's see what was going on during that time, because it was so long ago. It was about, like, I don't know, 20 something years ago now, like 25 years ago now, maybe. And so, plus there are a lot of great pictures of our relatives, some of them who are no longer, living with us on this side. So I was like, yeah, I really want to see some of those. And I looked, I'm like, gosh, she was clueless. And I just look at the picture. I'm like, she had no idea who she was. This girl in this picture still was, I mean, like, she just didn't know. And I remember telling people before the wedding that it felt like someone was sitting on my chest. Mm-hmm. And instead of seeking out people who I knew had some depth, I literally sought out probably the most shallow people I could find to remind me what I wanted to hear, which was, it's just jitters. You'll be fine. Ha ha ha. It's just jitters. It was not just jitters, but I didn't know that. I totally didn't know that. And so when I am in this marriage, that I'm like, this is craziness. This is awful. This is, how did I get here? And I'm like, well, you got here. No one put a gun to your head. No one forced you up the aisle. You weren't kidnapped, and like, you chose this. And I'm like, yeah, I did choose this. I totally chose this. And so needing to look in the mirror, like, well, you here we are. So you could pretend it's not bad. I'm like, well, I've tried that. That's not going well. I'm losing weight. I'm losing my hair. I feel miserable. That's not going too well. You could leave. That would be embarrassing. What will people say? Oh my gosh, my wedding was filmed on TV because I was a little TV news anchor celebrity then. Like, that would be so embarrassing. And you could, what? And finally, again, like you just reached this point, was like, I don't care what anybody says. This pain is awful. And you can talk about me all day long. I'm going to choose my own peace of mind and my own health. And I'm going to go forward and I'm going to own this. And the first part of owning, well, it wasn't the first part. Eventually, through it, you asked the question, like, well, what led me here? And I was like, well, because I didn't know how to listen to this voice inside of me. I didn't even know what that voice was. I didn't know my own worth. I cared too much about what other people thought of me. And so that's one example of how we can put the emphasis on the wrong place. And so when we make the shift to, I can accept my flaws, my mistakes with gentleness, and I can also choose anew. And that's so liberating. And wanting to experience that liberation is what I believe we all are here for, like to have that freedom and to expand and to grow. And it takes going into like our deepest fear sometimes. What will people say? Making a mistake, something doesn't work out, changing it, all these things. And it's usually the idea of it that's way worse than the reality. And the reality is like, wow, you just go through. You just keep going, just keep breathing one breath at a time. You don't have to go 10 breaths at a time, just this next breath, this breath right here. That's the one, focus right there. And so that's been a really huge compass for me, is to understand like, wow, I'm capable of really creating chaos and pain for myself. If I'm not careful, I can create that chaos and pain for other people. And I also can be a conduit and a creator of healing. And if I have a choice, then I want the latter. And because we all have a choice.
What is it like to help others go through this journey?
I love it. I mean, I really do. Like, that gets me up every morning because we're all connected. And I love looking into someone's face saying, it's all okay. All is well. It's one of my favorite quotes, and I can't take credit for it. It's Ade Shante, who says all is well in parentheses, especially when it doesn't seem like it, and more well than can be imagined. And I quote that so often because I love it, because it's the all, not a couple of things, not some things, and is present tense, not could be, not might be, not will be, not used to be, is well. And yes, especially when it doesn't seem like it, that fits the occasion usually. And then when you say, and more well that can be imagined, it just reminds us that there's so much more than the human mind can comprehend. So stop trying to comprehend it in our minds and open up in that deep place, whatever you call it, essence, spirit, presence, soul. Open up in this massive place that can be okay with the mystery of what it cannot contemplate and understand, that there's so much more. And we open up to that, we see, wow, there's far more in us than what we even thought. We're not what other people told us. We're not our pain, our mistakes. We're not our hurts. We are constantly changing, and we are ultimately all here connected. And we have an opportunity now with so much chaos happening outside to say, I may not be able to change that. However, there's this beautiful principle that when I change in here, I'm able to make more enlightened decisions. And that has massive impact in everything we do. And then it's coming from a place where there's harmony and integrity and also some ease and joy. And it's not all strife and got to bust a brick wall. It's like, well, actually, I talk about this stage of the divine feminine where there's like, wow, there's a wisdom and an intuition and an opportunity to do things without it being power over and action in this form of like action as the only choice. It's like actually letting is a powerful choice. Being is a very powerful choice. And amazing things can happen when we do that.
I was thinking of Brene Brown did a podcast with a guy who talks about like the 5 stages of grief. And he talks about how they're developing the idea that there's kind of the 6th one, which is finding meaning more than you get to some kind of acceptance, but then you kind of find the meaning. And I was thinking about that when you're talking about, people ask why this happened to me. People ask what am I going to do about this? And there's a kind of a fine line to walk here, but asking why this happened in that, treat it as, rather than the effect, treat it as the cause. This happened. So what is available to me now? What is, and not to say that like everything should happen, everything, it's not good that painful things happen to people. It's not to try and excuse those things happening. It's just to say, what can I get from this? And I really love that just distinction.
Yes. It just means we need to move from a different set of like, almost like a playbook that we've been following. We need to just like close that playbook and just like toss it aside. And now just like, okay, all of this is available. You're not confined to this little playbook. Like just put it down and then like open to the all. And now, what if I've been looking at this from just this small, narrow place? And that's what's causing me so much stress and distress. If I close that and I put it aside, then maybe I can make space and room to perceive that this isn't happening to me, but this is also happening through me and with me and for me, because I'm connected to the all. It's not like something happened outside to me. It was with me and through me. And ultimately it's for us to come into, a greater consciousness, a greater understanding, not intellectually, but a greater knowing that we are all enough.
So true. Such a different perspective.
Michanda, have you ever just like recorded your thoughts for a long time? I'm pretty sure if I just like listened to that all day long, everything would be a lot better. It's just, things would be a lot nicer.
Little hypnosis tape that you replay at night when you fall asleep.
Oh man. I could endlessly listen to that. I love the way you've thought about the world. I love the way you're expressing these. It's fascinating.
I think we are fascinating. Each of us. That's what I love working with people. I know if I were to spend more time with both of you, with anyone, like we're all so fascinating. We all have these amazing. The fact that we're still here is fascinating because we didn't get here. Just like, I went through some daffodils and some tulips, and that's how I'm here today. Like we all went through so much to be in this moment. And I love learning about that with everyone that we encounter. If we have that chance to like really get to know each other, like, wow, what I find is that each of us have different variables, so to speak, or different specifics. And yet those specifics are so universal. It's like the craziest thing. Like I may not understand anything what someone is saying, and I understand it and I know it. And that's what's so cool.
We know it inside. It's way deeper than the words, than the external stuff. You just know it.
We just know it. We just know it.
Wonderful Swedish word, I think. I think it's Swedish anyway. It's called sonder, and it describes the moment when you realize that like everyone else you run into has a life that is just as complex and just as detailed as yours, just as filled with all of these things. And I love that I feel like this takes it even a step further. You get to actually dive into the stories of those people. You get to not only realize that is absolutely true for them, but start to find out what that truth is. What has it been like to get to this place where, you just walk past this person on the street you may never see again. And they have decades of experience from before that and decades yet to come. And who knows what brought them there, where they will go. But you get a chance to actually explore that. And that's incredible.
It's incredible. And I learned so much. And I think that's the piece I want people to know is we learn from each other. So when I talk with clients, I tell them, run from anyone who tells you that they mastered something, ED, because I said I've mastered nothing. Yeah. I am also a work in progress. I am sharing with you what I am able to share and hold space with you as you're discovering it, because ultimately each of us discovers it. And so we hold space for one another with that love and acceptance and compassion so that people can see into who they are. And when they really connect and see the fullness of who we are, and like that begins them on their journey of freedom. I'm like, and then you're not going to need me. And then you just pass it on and pay it forward in whatever way you do. And then share with me too, because that's what we're all here for. It's reciprocal. And so that's what I really love about, connecting with people is that, wow, we're this beautiful, massive constellation. Like, yeah, we look at these constellations we can see, through the telescope, but like, we are some massive constellation that like someone else is probably looking through a telescope at. Like, that's what I think is so fascinating about, who we are.
I'm a big fan of the constellation. Anything. Like, I recently heard a podcast about someone who says he's allergic to pyramids, referring to the work pyramids in companies, because he believes that what really works is constellations. It's just all these stars connecting with each other, helping each other, creating something bigger than each other, and constantly just moving together. And it was one of those moments like, that's it. I'm allergic to pyramids. I know I've never liked them, but that's it. And it's the constellations. That's the concept. That's who we are. We're not pyramids. We're not one on top of the other.
Come on. Totally. And I love that as you were talking about, like, we're not static constellations. Yeah. Like, we're in motion and it moves. And like, you see one, like, I don't know, massive design or whatever. And like, it's going to change. Yeah. And that's what I think is cool is as we each grow and evolve and learn more, it changes and we're all connected to that. And so that's what I really love about this season. That's no more about like, I've got mine. It's like, no, we're here to help each other. That's our massive call. And it's a big shift from, being rewarded for like taking care of me and seeing ourselves as individual and working hard to see that was another lie I was fed, that I was separate.
Yes. Definitely to take those walls down. I love
the seeming contradictions in what you kind of present here. There's some wonderful we are all kind of unique. We have a very different flavor of what we got here, and as you said before, we have some of the same underpinnings. I may not know what you're talking about, but I know the feeling, right? I know what has brought you here, even if I don't know what's brought you here. We talk about you can't go for the external. You can't look for the external approvals. And yet when you learn this, like, okay, I'm going to help other people, you end up getting this help externally, ironically. It's just not this, it's not the approval external, it's just help from other people. And there's so many like back and forths where you have to know yourself to know other people. You have to get out, like away from the external to get to the connected.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all a little bit counterintuitive. It's all a little bit like upside down, twisty turvy. It's all a little, turned inside out. It's all of that because it just makes me laugh. Like, wow, we've spent so much time on looking at it from this really flat, material, shallow picture. And actually what's really there is magnificent and dynamic and moving and changing and shifting and can't be measured and can't be quantified and can't be defined or labeled. And as much as that may like just really mess with our heads up here, it's so awesome. And it brings a liberty and freedom. And it also brings a little bit of an accountability to say, I now own the role and the choice. And I see that that is one of our most powerful gifts is choice. And to really begin to want a connection to say, are my choices in harmony with who I am? Am I choosing from a place of depth and meaning, or am I simply going through the motions? Am I simply feeding someone else's expectation or even my own idea of an expectation that's not truth?
So true. Well, I'm sure we have at least 62 other constellations of conversations and explanations to go through. So 62 more hours of conversations.
No, because all the cats, if you get another cat, Alex, we're in trouble. Yeah.
I know. It would just multiply. Or if you change cats, do we keep the old lives and just compound? But this is truly illuminating.
This is super fascinating to get to talk to you, Michanda. I'm so glad we got to do this. Thank you so much for joining us. This is just, again, incredibly interesting just to get to talk to you at all, much less about all the things we get to talk about, which is all of these are some of my favorite topics. I love talking about just the depths of what is living and what is being.
Yes. We're all students in that. And so I'm excited to hear what, future generations will say. I say that we're the manifested hope of ancestors before us. And so it'll be interesting, like what we have left in the ethos for, the future, who will then be our manifested hope.
It's beautiful. So 2 questions for you. First, where can people find you? Should they want to be illuminated into their journey?
Yeah, I would say you can find me on, I'm careful when I say social media because you guys, I'm pausing that you're like, what, does she not know where she can find? I'm going to do my website. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm going to put out a little disclaimer that I'm sometimes not as consistent on social media because I personally am working through my own just stuff about social media right now and trying to see the light. So you can find my name, Michanda Lindsey, on Facebook and Instagram. If you email me, it would probably be easier. And it's a long email. So it's Michanda, my first name, Michanda. So I say Michanda spelled like Michelle and Shonda all squished together, but with the A for the Shonda Anda part. And then at MichandaLindsey.com. And then Lindsey is LINDSEY.com. So it's a lot of letters in the alphabet there. Michanda at MichandaLindsey.com. And then my website is also Michanda Lindsey. A lot of Michanda Lindsey. When you have a name like that, there aren't too many, so you can use it for all your domain spaces. You don't have to worry about anyone else having it. So it's real easy.
Perfect. And we'll have this all in the show notes, so nobody has to keep track and write down the spelling right now.
All those letters, that's a lot. Imagine being a child learning how to grow up to like spell her name. It was a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And our last question is, what does authenticity mean to you?
Wow. I would say authenticity means being who we really are, who we already are, who we always have been, who we always are, because I believe it is constantly present. And it's the opposite of all those things I talked about earlier of living in the veneer, trying to please other people. I say when the ego wants to try to drive and get in the front seat, it's the opposite of authenticity. And so I have to tell my ego, like, I know, you always get us in a ditch. Like you're supposed to sit in the back seat. Whenever you drive, we go up in a ditch. Like, that. And so that's why I'm telling you, go in the back seat. You're really only good when there's absolute physical danger. And there's usually not a whole lot of absolute physical danger going around. So your job is to stay in the back seat. And my job is to make sure you stay in the back seat. So authenticity is keeping the ego in the back seat and like being, understanding that it wants to try to drive, but usually is not needed to get us anywhere except in a ditch. And authenticity is a lot of practicing being who we all are, is connected, love, light, power, grace, ease, joy, compassion. That's who we all are authentically. So I think authenticity is being intentionally in harmony with who we all already are.
I'm definitely going to remember the ego driving into the ditch. Yes. As well as everything else you just said. But that's going to be my line whenever my ego starts taking over and be like, no, don't let it.
Always get us in a ditch.
Here, let me turn on your movie on the DVD player in the back.
Yes. We'll put on a little Disney movie for you back there, but yes,
Yes.
in the back seat.
Yes. Your Mario Kart, you can drive the Mario Kart in the back.
If you end up in a ditch there, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. You just kind of respawn. You're good.
Yes. You're allowed to be in the car, but you are not allowed to drive. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Michanda. This is a wonderful conversation, and I love all of the metaphors you've used. I'm trying write as many as I can remember immediately down, and then I'll just listen to it for the rest of it. But thank you again so much. A fantastic conversation, and thanks for doing this with us.
It was wonderful to talk with you both. Thank you so much, Christina and Alex. A joy to be with you. And so my pleasure, my joy today. I'm grateful.
Thank you. And have a great weekend.
Yes. Yes.
And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.